a glittering mansion, a library lined with wealth, and in one shocking moment a heavy book flies across the room, striking a pregnant woman and leaving her clutching her belly in pain. Her powerful husband thinks it will be another secret buried in silence, but this time the world is watching, because her mother is not only a witness, she is a neurologist with the evidence to bring him down. What follows is a storm of betrayal, exposure, and a fight for survival, and you will not believe how far the truth will spread until we dive deeper. Let us know what time you are listening and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below, we would love to hear from you. The sharp crack of impact breaks through the silence of the mansion's library. A heavy leather-bound book, thick and unforgiving, spins off course after striking her temple and lands on the polished floor with a dull thud. The sound echoes off the high ceilings, bouncing between shelves lined with first editions and trophies of wealth. She staggers, one hand instinctively flying to the side of her head, the other clinging protectively to her swollen belly. The skin on her cheek burns, her ears ring with a piercing hum, and the taste of copper seeps into her mouth. The room tilts. For a moment, she thinks she might collapse, but she forces her knees to lock. She cannot fall, not with the baby inside her. Her breaths come short and uneven. Every inhale feels sharp, as if her ribs are too tight for the air her lungs demand. She blinks rapidly, trying to focus. The chandelier above scatters light in fragments, each crystal piece stabbing at her vision. She feels the weight of his eyes on her, cold and heavy, as though her pain were an inconvenience instead of an alarm. On the far wall, a small red light blinks steadily. The surveillance camera, nearly hidden in the carved wood paneling, does not waver. Its unblinking eye captures everything. The book sailing through the air, the blow, the wife's faltering stance, the way she presses her hand against her belly, as if to shield the child from the violence meant for her. The silence after the strike is almost worse than the strike itself. No music, no conversation, just the pounding of her heart and the faint creak of the floorboards under her unsteady feet. Even the fire in the marble fireplace seems to hold its breath, flames frozen in a sudden draft of fear. Her mind races. How did it come to this? How did an evening that began with a simple conversation twist into this nightmare? Her head throbs in sync with her heartbeat. She feels warmth trickling near her temple and wonders if it is blood or just the sting of broken skin. She cannot tell. She cannot think clearly. She sees his silhouette still looming over her. The millionaire husband, tall and sharply dressed, breathing hard as if the act of throwing the book took something out of him. His jaw is tight, his shoulders squared, his hands still curled into fists. He mutters something low, unintelligible, the words vibrating more in his chest than in the air. For an instant she thinks he might throw something else, another book, a glass from the bar cart nearby, whatever his hand finds. Her stomach clenches. She pulls her arm tighter around it, murmuring a soundless plea to the life growing inside. A wave of dizziness sweeps through her, threatening to pull her under. She bites down hard, tasting iron again, refusing to give in. She has to stay upright. She has to stay conscious. And then, as the room blurs, her gaze fixes again on that blinking red light, the camera, always recording, never blinking. It is the only witness that cannot be silenced, cannot be bribed, cannot be manipulated. Its steady pulse reminds her she is not entirely powerless. The truth is being stored somewhere beyond his control. Her knees wobble, her breath stutters, but her mind clings to that thought. Evidence, proof, something stronger than denial, something she cannot be forced to forget. The book lies open on the floor between them, pages crumpled, spine cracked. It looks harmless now, but her temple throbs with its memory. The silence thickens again, pressing against her ears, making every second heavier than the last. She feels the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes, the sense that this moment will not vanish, that it will not be hidden. And somewhere deep inside, under the ache, under the dizziness, a thought burns clear and sharp. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. But 32 minutes earlier, the evening had looked very different. 32 minutes earlier, the house looked like a picture of calm. The late afternoon sun streamed through tall windows, spilling golden light across the marble floor of the master suite. The curtains swayed slightly with the breeze from the balcony. Everything shimmered with quiet elegance, the kind of beauty that belonged in glossy magazines. She stood near the closet, smoothing down the fabric of her maternity dress. It was pale blue, soft against her skin, the one she had chosen weeks ago for comfort as much as for beauty. At 7 months pregnant, every movement felt heavier. Still, she wanted to feel graceful. She wanted to feel like herself. From behind her came his voice, calm yet commanding. "That dress does not flatter you. Change into the white one I bought last week. It looks more presentable." Her hand froze on the fabric. Presentable. The word settled like a weight on her shoulders. She nodded slowly, though inside she felt a sting. Why did every choice she made feel like it belonged to him? The room smelled faintly of cologne and expensive cigars. He adjusted his cufflinks at the dresser, eyes catching her reflection in the mirror. "And no heels. The flats I ordered are better for your condition. Do not argue." His tone carried finality, leaving no room for preference or comfort. She lowered her gaze, her fingers tracing the soft curve of her belly. The baby stirred, a gentle reminder that she was not alone. She whispered silently, almost like a secret prayer. "When did my opinion become just a suggestion?" The silence between them thickened, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock. He walked over to the table where her phone lay. He picked it up, brows furrowing as he scrolled quickly. "You do not need to text your cousin so often. It distracts you. I will handle updates about the nursery. From now on, keep conversations brief." "Understood?" She swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. "Yes," she answered softly. He smiled faintly, but it was not warmth. It was satisfaction, the kind one has after straightening a crooked frame. He slipped her phone back onto the table as if returning something that belonged to him. The air was heavy with things unspoken. She tried to push away the growing unease, to remind herself of the promises he once made. He had told her they would build a perfect family, that she would never want for anything, that their child would inherit not only wealth but a legacy. Yet the promises now felt like polished stones, beautiful on the outside but cold and hard in her hand. In the distance, music floated up from the lower floors where staff prepared for an evening gathering. The melody was gentle, yet in this room it sounded muted, restrained. She wondered if anyone downstairs could sense the chill that clung to these walls. He stepped closer, straightening her necklace, his fingers brushing against her collarbone. The gesture might have seemed tender to anyone watching, but to her it felt like a reminder. He adjusted it with precision, tilting his head as if to say, "I control even the smallest detail." Her lips trembled, but she pressed them together, refusing to let the tears fall. Not yet. She wanted to believe there was still peace left between them, that tonight would not spiral. But deep inside, beneath the carefully arranged calm, she knew something was shifting. The quiet was not peace, it was pressure, and pressure always seeks release. The golden glow of afternoon had long since faded into a heavier dusk. What looked like calm from the outside had begun to reveal its cracks inside. His voice carried through the hallways, sharp at times, low at others, always threaded with control. The first warning had come earlier that week when he cut her bank card in half at the kitchen counter. The sound of plastic snapping echoed like a verdict. "From now on, all expenses go through me," he said, dropping the broken pieces into the trash. "You do not need to worry about finances. I will manage everything." "No." She had nodded, her throat tight, even though she once ran her own boutique before marrying him. The card had been more than money, it was independence. The loss of it stung in ways she could not voice. Another signal came the following morning, when her friend called to check in. The phone rang twice before he plucked it off the table. He spoke politely but firmly. "She is resting. Please keep calls short. Pregnancy is exhausting." He ended the conversation without asking her. She stood frozen, watching as he placed the phone back down with a casual smile. "You will thank me later," he said. The control deepened around her prenatal appointments. She had tried to confirm with her obstetrician, circling a date on the calendar with quiet hope. He glanced at the schedule and shook his head. "That day will not work. I have a board meeting. Reschedule. I want to be present. You should not go without me." His words sounded caring, but his tone left no room for argument. The pen slipped from her fingers as she erased the mark on the page. She felt the walls closing in, not brick and stone but rules and permissions. Every choice was filtered, measured, approved, or denied. He called it love. She felt the bars of a cage. Others had noticed too. At a boutique downtown, when she reached for a simple cotton dress, he had snapped, "That is not suitable. Choose something refined." The sales clerk froze mid-step, her eyes flicking between the wife's flushed cheeks and the husband's stern face. The clerk said nothing, but her silence carried weight. It was a silent witness, an acknowledgement that something was wrong. Later, at dinner, Surrounded by polished silverware and candlelight, he leaned closer and whispered with cutting precision, "You are letting yourself go. Do you want people to think you are careless?" His words slid like ice across her skin. She wanted to melt into the chair, to disappear before anyone else could hear. The humiliation stung deeper than the rules, sharper than the restrictions. It was not just control in private anymore. It was exposure. His voice carried across the table, just loud enough for the waiter to hear as he poured wine. The server's hand trembled slightly, spilling a drop onto the white cloth, then retreating quickly. She pressed her napkin to her lips, hiding the tremor, but her chest ached. The baby shifted, almost as if sensing her distress. She whispered silently to her child, a vow no one else could hear. "I will protect you. Somehow, I will find a way." The night stretched heavy and suffocating. What began as small cuts had become a pattern, a web of restrictions, humiliations, and silent witnesses. Each red flag waved brighter, louder, impossible to ignore. Yet she remained still, her heart racing, her mind clinging to fragments of hope. It was not the first time he had cut her down. But tonight, under the dim glow of chandeliers and the quiet stares of strangers, she realized it might not be the last. The library was cloaked in heavy silence, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. She sat at the edge of the velvet armchair, her hands resting on her belly, her back stiff with tension. He paced the room like a restless predator, each step louder than the last against the polished wood floor. His jaw tightened, lips pressed into a thin line, veins visible along his neck. "Do you even hear yourself?" he snapped. "Every word you speak is dripping with disrespect. You should be grateful for the life I provide." Her voice trembled but held steady enough. "Gratefulness does not mean silence. I am not your possession. I am your wife." His eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth curled in disdain. He reached for the shelf, his fingers grazing rows of expensive volumes bound in leather. He pulled one free, weighing it in his palm as though testing its heft. His chest rose and fell with short, sharp breaths. She saw the shift before it happened, the twitch in his jaw, the way his knuckles whitened as he gripped the book. Her heart pounded against her ribs, loud enough she thought he could hear it. She tried to rise from the chair, but her legs felt heavy, anchored by fear. His arm moved with sudden force. The book sliced through the air, a blur of brown and gold. She barely turned in time. It struck the side of her head with a sickening thud, snapping her vision into white sparks. Her body jolted, one hand flying to her temple, the other clutching her belly as she fought to stay upright. A crystal glass toppled from the nearby table, shattering across the floor. The sharp crack of glass joined the echo of impact, the sounds colliding into a single terrible moment. Her knees buckled, and for a second she thought she would collapse. But instinct pushed her to stay upright. She pressed her palm against the wall, steadying herself, breathing through the pain. A wave of nausea rose in her throat. The baby kicked, as if startled by the violence. Across the room, his chest heaved. His shoulders hunched, and his eyes darted wildly, as though he had crossed a line he had not planned to. Yet his face remained cold, unwilling to show remorse. And then it happened. The small red light flickered from the far corner, a steady blink against the carved wood paneling. The surveillance camera stared down at them, unblinking, impartial. It had captured everything. The tightening of his jaw, the motion of his arm, the moment the book connected with her head, the shattering glass on the floor. She lifted her eyes toward it, vision blurred. But her heart clung to that silent witness. For once, she was not entirely alone. For once, the truth could not be hidden. A gasp broke the silence. A housemaid had stepped in, her eyes wide, a hand pressed to her mouth. Behind her, another staff member froze in the doorway, clutching a tray. Their presence cemented what the camera had already recorded. There were witnesses now. The weight of humiliation pressed down on her, but so did the flicker of something else. Hope. Proof existed. People had seen. The lie he carried like armor was cracking. Her head pounded, the room tilting slightly, but she did not crumble. She steadied her breath, held her belly, and whispered softly under her breath, too low for him to hear. "This will not stay hidden." "Oh." The book lay on the ground between them, its pages crumpled, spine bent. It looked harmless, almost ordinary, yet it had become the weapon that tore the silence apart. And above them, the camera kept blinking, recording, never closing its eye. The library no longer felt like a sanctuary of wealth. The silence that had settled after the blow was broken by hurried footsteps and sharp breaths. The maid who had witnessed the act dropped the tray she was holding. Glasses rolled across the floor, one shattering with a ringing crack that seemed to slice through the heavy air. "Call an ambulance," she cried out, her voice higher than usual, trembling yet determined. The pregnant wife leaned against the wall, her hand pressed to her temple. Warmth spread between her fingers and she realized there was blood. Her other hand cradled her belly, as though her arms alone could shield her child from further harm. The house steward, an older man with silver hair and steady eyes, rushed in next. His voice cut through the chaos. "Step back, everyone. Give her air. Someone get ice now." Another staff member hurried to the kitchen. Within seconds, she returned with a towel wrapped around frozen cubes. She pressed it gently into the wife's shaking hands. "Here, hold this. It will keep the swelling down." The wife pressed the cold bundle against her temple. The sting made her eyes water, but it also brought a sharp clarity. She looked around the room. The camera still blinked. The shattered glass glistened on the floor. The book lay open like evidence in plain sight. Every detail screamed of truth. The steward straightened his back and turned to the husband. "Sir, this cannot be brushed aside. This is not a private matter anymore." His words rang with quiet authority, words that carried more weight than volume. The husband scoffed, his face flushing red. "You will remember who pays you. Do not overstep." But no one moved to obey him. The weight of what had just occurred pressed down on every witness. A younger maid pulled out her phone and whispered to another, "I am not deleting this. People need to see." She kept recording, the screen glowing in her palm like a torch in the dark. The wife's breathing steadied slightly as the steward helped her sit carefully on the sofa. He crouched beside her, his voice low but firm. "You are safe for now. An ambulance is on the way. Stay still. We will not let anyone erase this." She nodded faintly, her lips trembling. Tears streaked down her face, but her eyes shone with a quiet determination. This moment, awful as it was, would not vanish in silence. The sound of sirens faintly reached their ears, growing louder by the second. The staff parted near the front entrance, creating a path. 2 security guards from the estate arrived first, alerted by the commotion. They glanced at the scene, their eyes moving from the broken glass to the bloodied towel, then to the blinking camera above. One of them pulled out a radio. "Emergency confirmed. Violence against a pregnant woman. Medical response required immediately." The husband tried to speak again, louder this time, his words laced with desperation. "It was an accident." She exaggerated. "You all saw—" "No," the steward interrupted, his tone steady, unwavering. "We all saw exactly what happened. The camera saw it too." The silence that followed was not the same as before. This silence carried resistance. It carried proof. It carried the first step toward justice. The wife shifted slightly, holding the towel tighter to her temple. Her voice, weak but resolute, broke through. "This is no longer just between us. It never was." "No." And as the flashing lights of the ambulance drew closer outside, the truth sat unshaken within those walls. The evidence was alive. The witnesses stood firm. The lie had lost its power. The ambulance had taken her away. The mansion that once felt like an untouchable fortress now buzzed with whispers and hurried movements. The staff who had witnessed the assault did not bury the truth. They carried it out into the world. Within minutes, the first clip appeared online. The video was shaky, but the image was clear enough. The millionaire's hand tightening on the book. The arc of leather and paper flying across the room. The impact on the side of his pregnant wife's head. Her stumble. Her hand clutching her stomach. The camera light blinking from the corner. Every frame was damning. At first, a few hundred views trickled in. Strangers commented with shock. "Is this real?" one asked. "That poor woman. Someone help her," another pleaded. Then the numbers began to climb. Hundreds turned to thousands, thousands to tens of thousands. Within an hour, the clip crossed into 6 figures. By nightfall, it had been shared on every major platform. The red blinking light in the background became a symbol. Memes sprouted up with captions like, "The camera never lies." News outlets picked it up quickly. A local anchor's voice echoed across living rooms. "Breaking tonight. Leaked footage appears to show a well-known businessman striking his pregnant wife with a book. The video has now been verified by multiple sources." Comment sections overflowed with outrage. One read, "How dare he call himself a man? He should be behind bars." Another said, "She needs to get out, and fast. We stand with her." Hashtags calling for justice began trending. Inside his corporate office, phones rang without pause. Assistants whispered in corners, unsure how to answer the flood of calls. A major client canceled a contract, citing reputational risk. Another sent a terse email. Effective immediately. Our partnership is suspended until further notice. The millionaire sat in his office chair, staring at a screen filled with headlines. Businessman under fire after shocking assault video. Pregnant wife hospitalized after attack. Camera captures everything. Each headline cut deeper than the last, carving away at the empire he believed was untouchable. He slammed his fist against the desk, rattling a glass of water that spilled across scattered papers. It is exaggerated. Lies, he muttered, but even he knew the words rang hollow. The footage was undeniable. Meanwhile, outside the hospital where his wife was admitted, reporters gathered with cameras flashing. Their voices rose in a chorus of questions. Is she safe? Has she pressed charges? Where is her husband now? The sight of flashing bulbs through the windows reminded her that the world was finally paying attention. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. The swelling at her temple throbbed, the towel pressed against it still damp with melted ice, but her spirit felt different, stronger. She knew millions of eyes had seen the truth. One reporter's commentary spread quickly. What you just watched is not an isolated moment. It is a crime caught on camera, and it is shaking the foundation of his fortune. Online, voices grew louder, calling for immediate arrest. Do not let him buy his way out, one user wrote. Justice for her and the baby, another echoed. The humiliation he had once reserved for her now turned on him. Every sneer, every cutting word he had used against her was reflected back through the lens of public outrage. The empire he had built on intimidation and image was collapsing, and it was happening in real time, before the eyes of the world. The steady beep of the fetal monitor filled the hospital room. Each tone was measured, even, like a soft reassurance that the baby's heart still beat strongly. The sound cut through the chaos of the last hours, bringing a fragile peace. She lay propped against the white pillows, a bandage secured around her temple. Her head still ached with a pounding rhythm, but the monitor's steady song reminded her of what mattered most. The child inside her was safe, at least for now. The door opened quietly, and a woman in a white coat entered. Her presence carried both authority and warmth. This was her mother, a neurologist with years of experience diagnosing head injuries. The lines on her face deepened as she studied her daughter, but her voice was calm, steady, professional. I reviewed the scans, her mother said, placing a folder on the table. You have a concussion. It is serious, but manageable with rest and care. The baby is responding well, but we will continue to monitor closely. Tears welled in the wife's eyes. Mom, she whispered, voice cracking. He could have. Her words trailed off, too heavy to finish. Her mother clasped her hand firmly. He could have, but he did not. You are alive, and so is your child, and now we make sure he answers for this. 2 police officers stood at the doorway, clipboards in hand. They had already spoken to the staff at the mansion. Now they listened as the neurologist laid out the medical facts. She tapped the scans with her pen, her voice unwavering. This is not speculation. The trauma is consistent with blunt force impact. The object was heavy, and the strike was intentional. The injury could have endangered both her and the child. This is assault. Document it clearly. The officers nodded, their pens scratching across the paper. Every word she spoke became part of the official record. Her mother turned back to her daughter. I am filing formal charges. You do not have to carry this burden alone. My testimony, the scans, and the video evidence will stand in court. The wife squeezed her mother's hand, strength and relief flooding through her. For the first time in years, she felt protected, truly protected. A nurse adjusted the monitor, then offered a reassuring smile. The baby's heartbeat is strong. Try to rest. We will stay close. The wife closed her eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of the monitor anchor her. But when she opened them again, her expression was different. Firmer. She no longer felt like just a victim lying in a hospital bed. She was part of something larger, a case that could not be dismissed. Her mother placed a business card on the bedside table. The card bore the seal of a domestic violence advocacy group, along with a hotline number. Keep this. They will connect you to resources for legal protection and support. Tonight, you are under hospital care. By tomorrow, there will be a protective order in place. He will not come near you again. The officers confirmed it. We are securing a no-contact order. Effective immediately, he cannot approach this hospital or your residence. The words felt like a barrier being built around her. a wall of protection she had long needed. She exhaled slowly, a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. The beeping monitor carried on, steady and calm, a quiet song of survival. Her mother's hand remained firm in hers, anchoring her against the storm. For the first time, the path ahead seemed clearer. This was no longer just her private nightmare. It was a documented crime, and justice was already moving into motion. The hospital room grew quiet after the officers left, but the weight of their presence lingered. Papers had been signed, scans recorded, statements taken. Still, her mother knew this case needed more than a single night's events. It needed history. It needed proof that this was not a moment of anger, but a pattern of control and violence. Her mother opened her bag and placed a stack of photographs on the bedside table. The wife's eyes widened as she recognized her own face in them. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "I kept them," her mother replied, voice steady. "Every time you came to me with a bruise and told me you bumped into something, every time you said you fell or that it was an accident, I knew. I documented it because I feared this day would come." The wife's fingers trembled as she picked up one of the photos. It showed a faint purple mark on her wrist, taken months ago. Another captured the shadow of a bruise near her collarbone. She remembered each moment, each excuse she crafted to protect him. Seeing them laid out now felt like a wall of undeniable truth. Her mother continued, "This is not the first time he hurt you. It is only the first time he was caught." Tears filled the wife's eyes, but she nodded. She could not deny it anymore. A knock came at the door. It was her closest friend, carrying a small folder. She placed it gently on the bed. "I know you asked me never to interfere, but I saved the messages he sent you. The threats, the ones you deleted." "No." She opened the folder, and there they were. Text after text, his words cold and cruel. "Do as I say or regret it. If you embarrass me again, you will pay for it. Remember, no one will believe you." The wife felt her stomach twist, not from the pregnancy, but from the shame of what she had tolerated. Yet as she read them again, the shame gave way to something stronger, anger. Her friend added quietly, "I also pulled the screenshots of his emails to that woman, the one he tried to hide. They show not just betrayal, but intent. He talked about replacing you, about silencing you." The folder felt heavy in her lap. It was more than paper, it was the weight of years. Her mother leaned forward, her tone sharp and clear. "This is the mosaic of his abuse. Photographs, messages, witnesses, medical scans. Tonight he will not walk away with excuses. He will face what he has done." The wife took a deep breath. Her head still throbbed, but her spirit sharpened. "Not the first time," she repeated softly. "Just the first time someone saw." Her mother nodded. "And now everyone will see." The nurse entered briefly, checking the monitors and adjusting the drip. The rhythmic beeping continued, steady and calm, a contrast to the storm swirling outside this room. The wife stared at the wall of evidence spread around her bed. Photos of bruises, threatening messages, screenshots of betrayal. It was no longer a private burden. It was a documented case, a clear record of abuse. For years she had been silenced by fear, her pain hidden behind locked doors. Now the truth was in the open. The pattern was undeniable. This was no accident. This was not a single moment of rage. This was a history of violence, and it was finally catching up to him. The hospital stay stretched into several days. Each morning began with the same sounds, the steady rhythm of the fetal monitor, the squeak of nurses' shoes on polished floors, the soft rustle of curtains pulled aside for daylight. For the first time in a long time, she did not dread the start of a new day. Her mother sat with her often, updating her on the legal steps being taken. Protective orders had been filed. The police were gathering evidence. Lawyers had reached out, offering their services after seeing the viral video. She no longer felt like a silent victim hidden in shadows. She felt the machinery of justice moving with her instead of against her. But rebuilding meant more than paperwork. It meant choices. One morning she asked the nurse for a laptop. Her hands trembled as she typed out an email to a law firm specializing in domestic abuse cases. "I need representation," she wrote. "I will not be silenced anymore." Clicking send felt like drawing a line in ink that could not be erased. Later that afternoon, her best friend returned with a brochure for a women's support group. The cover showed smiling faces and words that read, "You are not alone." At first she hesitated, her pride resisting the idea of sitting in a circle and telling strangers her pain. But as the day wore on, she turned the pages slowly. She realized that surviving meant connecting, and connecting meant healing. That night she made a second decision. She would not return to the mansion. She asked her mother to help her find a small apartment, somewhere safe, somewhere hers. The idea of walking into those grand halls again made her stomach twist. She wanted walls that held no memory of broken glass or shouted words. Her mother agreed immediately. "It does not matter how modest it is," she said gently. "It matters that it is yours." 2 days later, her brother carried in a crib, the very same one she had once been forbidden to buy. This time there was no one to stop her. She placed it near the window, the pale wood glowing under the soft light. She traced her fingers across the rail, tears welling, but not from fear. These were tears of reclaiming, of taking back something stolen. Every choice she made, no matter how small, built a new foundation. Choosing her own meals, deciding when to rest, speaking freely without fear of correction. They were acts of sovereignty, each one a declaration. I belong to myself again. Therapy sessions followed. The first one felt raw, her words halting, her voice breaking as she recounted years of quiet suffering. But the therapist's calm nods and the simple words, "You survived," gave her courage. Session by session, the fragments of her spirit began to knit back together. At the end of one session, she whispered to her unborn child, "We will not grow in fear, we will grow in freedom." The baby shifted, as if answering, a quiet reminder of the life that gave her strength. Her mother watched her with pride, offering support but never steering. This was her daughter's path now, her daughter's decisions. One evening, as the city lights flickered beyond the apartment window, she sat in the rocking chair beside the crib. The bandage on her temple was gone, replaced by a faint scar, a line that would fade but never disappear completely. She touched it lightly and did not feel shame. She felt resilience. The scar was not just a reminder of pain. It was a symbol of survival. And as she sat there, rocking gently, she realized she was no longer the woman who endured in silence. She was the woman who chose, who rebuilt, who claimed her power back piece by piece. The apartment was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that brought comfort instead of dread. No footsteps pacing the floor, no sharp commands breaking the air. Only the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft rustle of fabric as she shifted in her rocking chair. Beside her, the crib stood ready. The pale wood gleamed under the lamplight. Inside, a blanket her mother had knitted was folded neatly, waiting for the child who would soon rest there. She reached out, brushing her fingers across its edge, and allowed herself a rare smile. Her mother, the neurologist who had stood by her through the darkest hours, entered quietly. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and whispered, "You are safe now. Truly safe." The daughter leaned into that touch, closing her eyes for a moment, letting gratitude wash over her. The world outside was still buzzing with the aftermath. News channels replayed the footage. Commentators discussed the charges, the legal battle ahead, the ripple effect on his business empire. But inside this small home, the focus was no longer on scandal. It was on healing. She looked toward the window where city lights sparkled in the distance. "The truth set me free," she murmured. It was not just a thought. It was a declaration. Her journey was far from over. Court dates loomed ahead. Lawyers would argue. Reporters would pry. But she no longer feared the noise. She had evidence, she had witnesses, and she had her mother by her side. Most of all, she had reclaimed her voice. The scar on her temple caught the light. She touched it gently, not with shame but with strength. It was proof of survival, a mark that told a story she no longer needed to hide. For a brief moment, she imagined her future child asleep in the crib. She pictured herself standing tall at parent-teacher conferences, walking into school plays, holding her child's hand at graduations. The vision carried a simple promise. Their life together would be built on freedom and dignity, not fear. The image of that blinking red camera returned to her mind. It had never looked away. It had not allowed the lie to take root again. Sometimes the smallest things became the strongest allies. She whispered a quiet thank you to the silence of technology that had captured truth when no one else dared to. Her mother sat across from her, watching quietly, as if she understood the thoughts circling in her daughter's mind. After a while, she spoke softly. "There are others who are still trapped. Others who think no one will ever believe them. You know that feeling. Now you can be their voice." The daughter nodded slowly. "Yes, I will not let my story end here. I will use it to help someone else escape." The lamp flickered slightly, casting a warm glow across the room. She inhaled deeply, steady and calm, her hand resting over her belly. Her voice, firm but gentle, filled the quiet. Sometimes evidence does not only convict, it frees. The screen fades to black. A simple image lingers. The crib, waiting peacefully in the lamplight. Words appear on the screen. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, you are not alone. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 for confidential support. And then, one last invitation. Like, share, and subscribe to spread awareness. Every story shared is a step toward justice.